turn to fiction now. Edinburgh-based writer Tony Black is a journalist, editor and novelist who's become an established name in the crime fiction world, but last year he made a bit of a departure from dead bodies and murder with his semi-autobiographical novel His Father's Son, which actually he spoke to us about on this very show just about a year ago. And now he's dived into a different genre with his new novel The Last Tiger, which is, well, it's a few different things, Tony, isn't it? It's an account of the first settlers arriving in early 20th century Tasmania, and there's also a mystery centring on the Tasmanian tiger, because yes, it's fiction, but the tigers are, or were, real, Tony, is that right?
They were indeed, yes.
Australian tigers, I didn't know. I've not been watching enough David Attenborough documentaries.
Tasmanian tigers, to be precise.
Yeah. And are they still around?
Well, that's the big debate at the moment. That's the mystery that you referred to.
Right.
They're a bit like the Loch Ness Monster. Nobody really knows. Officially, the official verdict is that the last one died in Hobart Zoo on Tasmania in 1936. Its name was Benjamin, I do believe. But every now and again they get sightings of them.
That's brilliant.
In some of the most bizarre spots, like eating in dumpsters outside Melbourne CBD.
Oh, poor things.
So yeah, even though they've been officially extinct on the mainland for thousands of years, every now and again you get these weird sightings.
So there you come up with facts and figures immediately. There speaks a man who's done his research.
Yeah, and do you know what? It was about 10 years ago I wrote this book, or started writing it, so it's all stuck in my head. Yeah.
So you started writing it, but did not finish it until recently?
I started writing it, and then I kind of got waylaid with the crime fiction, and Random House wanted me to stay writing crime fiction and didn't want me to try anything else. So I had to wait until I was out of contract to give it to a good publisher like Cargo in Glasgow.
Local publisher, way,
yeah. Good publisher, they're a great publisher.
Sometimes it's good getting out of contracts and you do what you want to do. You look at it in a positive way. But I'm talking about you got the facts and figures there, but. And you're also a journalist. I presume you did a fair bit of research with this? Yeah, well, that's how I stumbled across the story, actually. I was working in Australia on a little rural paper. This was in my late 20s. And I was quite new to the paper, and I don't think they really knew what to do with me. They couldn't really understand me for a start. So I got kind of handballed this story about a madman that had taken a picture on his video camera. And it was a video, it was videos in those days, of a Tassie tiger just on the outskirts of Melbourne. So I gave him a call and spoke to him about it, and basically did all the same questions that I would do with a Loch Ness Monster sighting when I was working for the Press and Journal in Inverness, and wrote the story up and put it in the paper, and the next day it just went absolutely wild. My phone was ringing red hot with people saying, I've seen one as well, and we were building this house out in the bush, and when we cut down the bush this pack of tigers ran out, and I hit one with my ute, and I went out to see it, and it had this massive big mouth on it, and I wasn't going anywhere near it. So it just went on and on and on and on and on. And I didn't know anything about the Tassie tiger, and I don't think anybody really does. It's kind of one of those stories that Australia and the world probably quite rightly want to forget about, because it's so shameful that, we had this apex predator, this pouched marsupial dog with tiger stripes, and it looked amazing, and it just did so many incredible things, and then we shot it to death and paid hunters a bounty for the privilege of doing it. So did that lead you then to your story? Because you haven't written a story set now, or then when you discovered it, you've gone back. No, I've went back. It's set around about the turn of the last century on Tasmania. The Last Tiger follows the family of a young Lithuanian migrant called Mikko, who are fleeing actually the Tsarist occupation of their country, and they think they're going to New York. They've given all their money to the smuggler to take them to New York, and they're really excited about seeing high-rises and skyscrapers and cars and stuff like that, and then they rock up in Van Diemen's Land. And what is that like? It's a former prison colony of the British Empire. It's inhabited fully by the wild sons of convicts, and a few very aristocratic graziers who are chopping down large tracts of rainforest to put sheep on it.
And his father, Miko's father, doesn't know how to make a living at all. That the only thing he really knows from his previous way of life was when he was in the army and when he was a farmer, and that's shooting wolves and shooting people for the sun.
Yes.
So he becomes a tiger tracker to claim the bounty of £1 a pelt, which was roughly about £750 in today's money. So
yeah.
So good money.
Of course, especially if you arrive and you don't have anything.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Yeah. So that's where it starts off, about 1909.
See, that's complicated, isn't it? Because immediately you talk about that, you can sort of empathise with the guy, you can understand why he's doing it, and there you're saying it's a troubled history of this, but actually if you go back to the roots, maybe it's an uncomfortable truth,
well,
actually.
I know exactly what you're saying. This was kind of the height of the Depression era, and people were really struggling to make a living, especially in the colonies where it was really, really quite harsh at that time. You know, this was... as I say, it was a prison colony, and people were getting locked up for absolutely anything. If you ever look into the history of Ned Kelly's family, I think they were more in jail than out of jail. How he managed to hold up all these banks is beyond me.
Yeah, incredible. Okay, we shall talk some more, because it's also, you're looking at families here too.
Sure.
We'll take a wee break for some very mellow music. You're a wee bit sleepy because you've got a baby keeping you up at night, so I hope this doesn't sound like
He'll probably just put me to sleep as a lullaby.
I've got the lights right down here in the studio, and this man needs his sleep, but this is the beautiful voice of Gregory Porter. See, I mean, it's a mellow vibe. The quite glorious voice of Gregory Porter and No Love Dying, which I think is getting the kind of metaphorical thumbs up from my guest, Tony Black. You like it?
I do indeed, yeah.
Yeah,
Great voice.
lovely voice. Well, if you're into jazz, of course, make sure you listen to our jazz programme, Stephen Duffy with the Jazz House. It covers everything, actually, all sorts of music from all over the world, from the classics to the contemporary, big band, bebop, all of that, every Wednesday from 8:05. Tony Black's here. We're talking about the new novel, The Last Tiger, and I was talking about family, so we're talking about your boy keeping you up at night. There is a father-son relationship at the centre of this story, isn't there?
There is, yeah. There's this is kind of becoming a bit of a trademark of mine now. The last one had a father-son element in it. The conflict here is primarily between the father and son. I'm trying to think what I can actually tell you without giving away too much of the plot.
Yeah, no,
but something happens.
Don't do that.
Something happens en route, which kind of makes Miko turn a little bit against his father. And when they arrive in Tasmania in their new home, Miko. He follows all these stories about the tiger. It's folklore. They thought it was a vampire. They thought it snatched babies out of settlers' huts and stuff like this. But he doesn't believe any of it, and he actually goes out looking for the tiger and thinks he discovers possibly the lair of the last tigers. But by this stage, his father's been making his living as a tiger man and becoming quite famous around the island for being good at what he does. So that kind of compounds the conflict between the father and son. But it's not till you really get to the very end that you find out what has happened in the journey from Lithuania that has created another kind of conflict between the father and son. It's one of those kind of standard things that I think happen with fathers and sons. They argue about all the things that mean nothing to them and never actually talk about the things that do mean something. The real meat of the argument is never discussed. It's just skirted around. So it's kind of like that, but this one kind of comes to a head at the end.
Do you know, it's interesting, because we all talk about crime fiction and, genres and all of that, and being very good for, there's a genre, there's a framework, but within it you can explore interesting ideas. But clearly, this was something that wouldn't have been suited to, an archetypal crime novel, would it?
No, I don't think you could have really made it into a crime novel. You could have perhaps tried to crowbar in a murder at the start and around there, but you'd just ruin it. It just wouldn't work at all.
And how do you find, because later on we're going to be hearing about the bloody Scotland Crime Fiction Festival. So not surprising there's an international festival grown up in Scotland over the last years for that, very popular.
Yeah.
It's something in the water. We seem to have produced so many. But how do you feel about it? Do you think you've reached a point now with this novel and the last one where you are free to go between, and do you think Cargo, they'll be like, no, we don't want you going back to the crime fiction, Tony? How does it work?
It's a good question. I haven't actually spoken to Cargo about that.
I wonder if they're listening.
Cover your ears now, Mark. I've got a crime novel out next month, actually, with another publisher.
I see, so right.
So but that's one that I'd written a couple of years ago, so it was kind of on the back burner and due to come out anyway. I've not really thought about what I'm going to do next.
Yeah. See, I find that interesting because obviously there's so many writers on the show week in, week out, and you do get the feeling of a career that's planned as much as it can be when you're talking about a creative person in novels. And yours seems more, if you excuse the word, random.
It's totally all over the shop, yeah. No, I've got a book of ideas at home, a kind of notebook that I put all these ideas into, and I've probably got about, I don't know, 60 ideas for books kicking about there just now. 40 of them are probably unpublishable, and the top 20 I'll let float about in my head for a wee while until I feel there's one that's actually drawn me to write it. So, you know, the ideas are there for another crime novel, and there's ideas there for you know, straightforward literary novels like The Last Tiger. But I don't know which one I'm going to do next. I'll just get this one out of the way first.
Just briefly, just tell, how does it work with you? Are you if people are with you, you just look as if you're lost in the moment and you're sort of looking out the window because these ideas are percolating through your head of the top 20 possible novels that you're going to write?
Yeah, that sounds like me, just mooning about, eyes all over the place. I try not to do it when I'm driving, but that's about it.
Well, if you do, we know what you're up to. Well, look, thank you very much. Best of luck with this one.
Cheers, thank you.
That's Tony Black, and you can catch Tony at the launch of this book, The Last Tiger, 6:30 on Thursday at Blackwell's Bookshop in Edinburgh. If perchance you're listening to the Sunday repeat edition of the show, that launch is past, but the book is out now, published by Cargo. Thanks, Tony.